rescue the economy. We knew that it would be a difficult piece of legislation, but we had to do it. And so we passed the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act. You call it the stimulus package. And because of that and some other legislative things that we've done, we've been able to recover the economy, and we're on the right path. It's slow, it's painful, but we're on a good track to recover and restore the economy. 2010 elections came along. And what did Obama call it? A shellacking? It was a shellacking, and we haven't recovered yet. You should know that we lost 2 or 3 senators, 4 senators maybe in the United States Senate. We still have control of the Senate, but it's a narrow margin. And in the Senate, they have some very interesting rules that require 60 votes supermajority in order to get anything to the floor for passage. But over in the House, where you allow me to serve, 435 members, the majority is now Republican. And when I say that they're in control of the agenda, they're absolutely in control of the agenda. They are the majority. And so this week, we finally put into legislation a budget that's going to finish out the 2011 fiscal year through September 30th. Very painful budget. Cuts $39 billion out of discretionary spending. But that was the deal that the Speaker and the leader of the Senate and the President of the United States reached, $39 billion in cuts. The book is closed on that. We are ready to go through September 30th. Now we're getting ready for the 2012 budget. And if you think what you saw on television the other night was contentious and a train wreck, I want you to pay attention to what's going to happen with the 2012 budget. It's going to be, I won't say interesting, it's going to be devastating what we're going to have to endure. And let me tell you about the 2012 budget, and then I'm going to take my seat. To put it in context, Tom Salinger, we've got a new group in town called the Tea Party. Now, Dewey Sheffield and I laughed at the Tea Party when they started 2 years ago. We just thought it was a bunch of, I don't know, the press is here, I got to use nice words. That's my upbringing. But we just thought there was a fringe group that would just eventually would dissipate and go away. But the reality is that the Tea Party is a movement in this country that cannot be dismissed. They are well organized and they are well financed. And as a result of the 2010 election, we have 87 Tea Party Republicans who have joined the House of Representatives. They have 2 missions, Governor. They have 2 missions. They don't care about all the stuff that we care about, feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and building housing and infrastructure, and good schools and good preschool programs. That's not where they are. They have 2 missions in life. And trust me when I tell you this, they have 2 missions. Their first mission is to get rid of President Barack Obama at any cost. Whether it's the birther argument, whatever they can think up or dream up or make up, their number 1 objective is to defeat and to discredit President Barack Obama. That is a fact. Their next objective is to cut discretionary federal spending, not the mandatory stuff now, not defense and homeland security, and I'm talking about Medicare in a minute. But their objective is to cut the measly $560 billion in discretionary spending that we have. Cut it not with a scalpel, but with a meat axe. There are some among those 87 who believe that the federal government should only be involved in 4 things. When you hear about less government, let me tell you what their philosophy of less government is. When my Republican opponent ran in 2010, I just thought this guy was in a class by himself, but he was connected to a network of conservatives and right-wing ideologues across the country. When they say less government, they mean that the federal government should be involved in 4 things: defense, regulating the currency, providing a court system, federal court system, and providing a State Department so we can have a relationship with the other 95% of the world. they sincerely believe that the federal government should not be involved in education and environment and transportation and all of the other good things that we do in this country. They are way out there beyond anything that you can imagine. And so now you've got these 87 Tea Party Republicans who sit in the Republican conference every day, and they yell and they scream and they challenge their leadership. And so now the 87 people, members, Republicans, are running the Republican conference. You've got a small minority of Republicans in the House who are telling the majority of Republicans what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and how much to do it. That's the problem that we have. And so Speaker Boehner came out a few weeks ago and told Democrats, I'm telling you right now, we're going to cut $32 billion out of this 2011 budget. And we kind of fussed and he'd and hawed. And when he took that back to his conference, and when they read about it in the roll call newspaper, they had a prayer meeting with John Boehner. Said, who authorized you to say $32 billion? At home when we campaigned, we promised our people $100 billion. Where did you come up with this $32 billion? Boehner comes back and says, I made a mistake. 32 is not going to be enough. We need $100 billion. Cut out of discretionary spending this year. We said, why? Because the Tea Party said so. We said, well, you're the Speaker of the House. You got the tail wagging the dog. And he says, well, that's the way it has to be. So finally, when H.R. 1 was finally passed, the compromise of the reduced amount was $60.1 billion, and it went to the Senate, and it went nowhere, and that's what gave rise to the resolution with the president. Finally, let me talk about the Ryan budget. You're beginning to hear the name Ryan. Ryan is the chairman of the Budget Committee in the House of Representatives. All revenue bills start in the House. You need to know that the Senate doesn't originate a revenue bill. It all starts in the House. The Budget Committee does that, and this guy is the chairman of the Budget Committee. Ryan says we're going to balance the federal budget. Here's the way we're going to do it. We're going to cut $6 trillion out of spending over the next 10 years. That's not a good starter, but I guess it could be as long as it was in the right places. But he says here's the other way we're going to do it. We're going to reduce marginal tax rates on the high-income taxpayers. This crowd is still obsessed with tax cuts. In light of all of the crises that we're having in this country, they are still locked into this tax cut mantra. And so the first thing that comes out of their mouth in the 2012 budget is we're going to reduce taxes on the high-income people from 35% to 25%. Well, there are a few high-income people in this room, and I think most of us wouldn't mind paying more in taxes if we knew that it was going to solve our fiscal crisis. Just think about it, $100,000 a year in income, 35% marginal rate. That's $35,000. You cut it to 25%, that's $25,000. So you're talking about giving high-income people basically a $10,000 per year tax cut. But then Ryan comes back and says, and it's going to be budget neutral. How do you give such a substantial tax cut and then tell the American people it's going to result in neutrality in the budget? The only way it's going to be done is it's going to have to come from middle-class families. Finally, and most importantly, the 2012 budget is talking about Medicare and Medicaid reform. And this is the message that you should take with you today. Republicans are now advocating privatizing Medicare. We knew it was coming. We felt it was coming when they started talking about privatizing Social Security. Now they're talking about privatizing Medicare. They're saying in the year 2022, 10 years from now, the government will be out of the Medicare business. And so most of us won't be affected, but your children will, your grandchildren will. 10 years from now, the government will go out of Medicare business altogether. And what they're going to do is to give seniors 65 and older a voucher and let you go out and buy your own insurance from their friends who run the insurance companies. And the average retiree would only get about 65% of the cost of health insurance for seniors, which means that they will have to pay the addition, actually 68%, the additional 32%. That is a travesty. Medicaid, and we depend greatly. Frank Emery's been on the Board of Commissioners, or he was on the Board of Commissioners for 40 years, and he knows what Medicaid can do for a county and what Medicaid can do to a county's budget. Knows so well, and the state as well. Now the federal government says we're getting out of the Medicaid business. Poor people, we're not going to help you get well. What we're going to do is just take a pot of money called a block grant. We're going to give it to the governor and let the governors decide how to spend the Medicaid money. Well, progressive states would say, okay, we can't cut Medicaid for poor people, so we're going to have to raise taxes in our state to help pay for the program. Other states are going to say, you know, we care for poor people, but we ain't raising taxes, so we're going to start cutting services. We're going to start cutting services on low-income people. That's going to happen in 2013 unless we do something about it. So I've said all of this to say to you in closing that this election coming up in 2012 is about defining who we are as a nation, not just as a party, but who we are. Do we want to reduce taxes on millionaires at the expense of senior citizens and the poor? And the answer is no. We've got to organize in Wilson County for 2012. We've got to do voter education, and what I've given you for the last 24 minutes is voter education material. But next, we've got to do voter registration. We've got to get more Democrats registered to vote, and we've got to use the resources that we have at our disposal. We are living in a technological age now. We can tell you almost to a T every unregistered person in Wilson. And we can give you lists, and we need to go out and to make it happen. If we fail to do that, and if we get a Republican governor in this state that can work with what they think is going to be a Republican legislature, if we have a Republican president working with a Republican Congress, it will set us back in this country for more than 40 years. It's in your hands, it's in my hands. Let's work together to make it happen. Thank you very much.